learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from Realtuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at Realtuners.com and click on Realtuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to Realtuners.com or message us on Facebook at Realtuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? March 30th and 31st, late model Dodge and Mopar factory ECU tuning with Rick Tapp in Dallas-Fort Worth. April 13th and 14th, a Level 1 EFI course at Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. April 27th and 28th, an advanced class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Now let's get this show on the road. And as usual, we have our normal panel of hosts. Bill Fowler of Big Hat Racing. Chad Reynolds of Bangshift.com. James Short of Shore Tuning. John Bewley of Little John's Motorsport Solutions. Mark Dalquist of Throttles Performance. Scott Clark of Realtuners.com. Scott Evans of Helix Tuning. Bry Clem from Clapped Out. Tom Sewell of Fuel Injector Development. Dan Parker, the movie star. He's blind in one eye and can't see out the other. And possibly a few of our previous guest hosts will pop their heads in and chat as well. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of Realtuners. Tonight, our special guest is Brian Barnhill of TunerTools.com. All the equipment that you need to be able to tune your engine, to be able to make your car run better, run faster. Without further ado, I'm going to bring in all our peoples, see how they're doing tonight. Hello,
Testing,
gentlemen.
1, 2, 3. Can you hear us? Is it working? Hello.
Hey.
Sure looks like it's working from my end.
Okay, everybody out there, if you can't hear us, don't say anything. I'm just kidding.
Right.
They'll say something if they don't hear us.
But post something.
Yeah. I always say, do you hear us okay? Just to make sure we're not talking into the ether.
Can you hear me now? Good.
Yeah, right on.
Hear me now?
Cool. Well, man, what a crappy weather week still. And they're calling for 6 more inches of snow here up in the Omaha area tomorrow. Lovely. Oh my God, I'm ready for it to be warm.
I'm just glad it's you, not me.
I'm with you. It hasn't been above freezing here since I was like 11 years old. It feels like I don't even know what's going on. Oh my God.
Come to Phoenix and do some tuning.
Right. It's that situation where, I mean, I was just in Vegas and I was just in Fort Worth. And so I can't complain. It was, it was like 47 in Vegas and like 47 in Fort Worth, but that was still way better than the 11 it is like right now here. But the crap that bugs me the most is like the snow that fell while I wasn't here, and then it turned into ice. So now my sidewalk is absolutely treacherous and useless. And it's this 3-inch thick layer of solid sheet ice, just a huge pain in the ass. And you can't put salt on it. The salt only works down to like 20 degrees or something. Anyway, I'm just bitching. But time for the weather to get better, because holy crap, am I ready for it?
Right.
Yeah. So let's see, stuff to talk about. Hey, so it's not in the advertisements yet, but we went ahead and did a thing. We're slowly easing into the technology that lets other instructors attend and teach at our classes remotely. We did it last week in the class we had at DynoCon. We had a 1-day advanced Holly class, and we had Mr. Evans remote in from home and
really good.
A couple. Oh God, it was awesome. I mean, now I had a really nice PA, really good speakers so we could hear you, and a microphone so that you could hear us back. So it literally was like Evans was in the room with us, and he went over his excellent presentations on flex fuel for Holly, like the right way. Sorry, Holly guys, but Evans' way is better because you can do it with methanol. And then he also went over something that I added to my first customer today that I worked with on a remote, the fuel pressure compensation. Something higher end ECUs that cost a lot more money than Holly do is they use fuel pressure as part of their fuel model so that the ECU has a better idea of accuracy in fuel delivery. Evans has a method for fuel pressure compensation that's just top freaking notch, man. It's super awesome. And it also, if you have a mechanical fuel pump for your drag racers that are running a mechanical pump, instead of having to mangle your cranking fuel table, this thing will automatically mangle it for you on the fly. I hate to say that. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, so what's nice is, and then after you've started the car the first time and it now has residual fuel pressure, if you have a check valve, you don't have to rely on that mangled table won't flood the motor out, right? So it literally just compensates for the pressure or lack of pressure on the fly. So I've seen that work. I actually did that on a drag car today, and the guy was like, "Oh wow, that's kind of cool." So it's not going to flood out when the thing's warm and it's already
really
primed.
Good.
Oh, it's killer. It was totally killer. And, it just made it to me more like a Pro EFI or an M1 series Motec or one of those better systems that rely on fuel pressure model. So I just made the Holly feel a lot cooler to me to have that on there. Now, we added his presentation. This is funny. Evans had a little surgical procedure about 2 hours before he was to teach this class. So as a backup plan, he made videos for us. I won't go into details about that procedure, but he made videos for us just in case said procedure would preclude him from attending the class in real time. We turned those videos into webinars. If you go to realtuners.com, shop now, or look through the live webinars, you can find the two. We now have 9 webinars online. And we added his webinars, and dude, at $10 a pop to watch them, it helps pay the streaming bill and helps make Scott and I a little bit of money just to keep the things up and put into the effort. So we're going to be adding more stuff, but definitely go check out this webinars. And a number of people already have so far, which is cool. Other than that,
more to the point, the information is super valuable. And for $10, it's like getting $1,000 worth of insider information.
Yeah. And listen, the free shit fairy didn't come and give me a profiler, so I went ahead and made a video on it, even though I never used it. It's not like that. This is something that these guys are using and testing on real cars that go real fast and win big events and validated and is working. So this is not, you actually have the benefit of a professional like Evans, in his experience, which is really good and solid and, 15 or 20 years worth. He didn't just start tuning yesterday, and he's tuned a whole lot more than 3 cars, and this ain't the free for all Holly Facebook group or whatever. This is legit skills and experience, and it shows. It's really cool. We feel like we're presenting some good information there as opposed to some of the other free crap you get out there. So anyway, and that's
hopefully I'll make a bunch more of the little versions that we can put up too. I'll try to come up with some other things. You guys ask for it. We'll try to put them up.
Yeah. Evan's webinars are 10 and 15 minutes long versus the 3-hour ones I make you sit through when I ramble on.
I just do one thing at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. You did good, man. We're the new model for those webinars. We're going to follow that for the rest of them. And a lot of people watched the webinars over the last 12 months. So it's obvious that we need to crank those up. I think a few of you know I'm also coming out with a book series here, trying to make learning affordable for the people that don't have the budget to come to the class and the people that like books and want to read. So we are in the editing process right now on number 1 of a 3-part Holly series book for LS engines that I'm doing. And I'm following that up. I'm already doing the research and work on a Coyote and Mod Motor Holly specific series. So just some simple stuff to help people out that's going to be cheap and affordable and get you going without having to hurt parts or worry about stupid stuff. So
those books are, we've got some of those on our site over at Tuner Tools, and That's even guys, not a budget thing, but sometimes a guy just wants to have something in their hand as a reference when they're going through something. And that's hard to do with a YouTube video. We've got a ton of books that have always done well for us. And that's one thing we need to talk about after, Scott, because that's a great thing that we love to have more of. And that's one thing I'm looking for more of.
I'm all over it. I'm actually negotiating with other third-party authors. Basically, I'm setting up our own. I'm working with a publishing company that's just got off the ground, and they're making it more affordable for car guys to sell books. Here's the thing. Let me tell you, I researched this. I had 2 big-time publishers approach me about writing books here a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago, and I looked into it. And you got to sell thousands of books through them on Amazon before you even get paid for any of the stuff, for any books that you sell. And then after a few thousand, you get a few cents a book, and they're going to sell 1 million books and $1 million worth in retail, and you're going to make $1,400, right? And that's the way it's been for 25 years for guys who want to, like Banish has written a book. Very few guys, but guys like Banish, guys like Ben Strader have written these books. But you can read those books and you can see why, after you understand the way they don't get paid for the effort that goes into it, that they don't just keep writing them. So I found someone who was starting a publishing company, and they've got the offset press and all the goods to go ahead and print high quality books, but they're willing to pay a little bit more for the guy who writes the book and give him money per book right away. Right. And so it makes it way more appealing. Well, I've got a guy working on a Mopar factory ECU book. If I can convince James Short, we're going to work on the GM factory ECU tuning book too. So hopefully we got some
4 and 5 GM stuff is a problem right now, because most of the stuff is written around Gen 3 and back pre even I think HP Tuners 3.0, and it's a problem we get. Guys are like, oh, I've got this car. I was like, well, so I'm selling them this book and then sending them addendums I wrote, or hey, this says this, but it's actually this. It's the same idea. So I don't understand the concept, but here's where it's going now.
Let's back up and introduce the guy that's talking. A couple weeks ago, I stumbled across what I thought was the most kick-ass idea for a website. It's been around a while, but it's tunertools.com. I'm like, who is this guy? So I found their Facebook page and I messaged him. Lo and behold, it's Brian Barnhill, who I've followed on Facebook. We've been associates, I guess, on Facebook for a long time and friends on Facebook for years. We're a part of the same certain groups and stuff where I shit talk everybody and get banned and all that stuff. Anyway, so it's good to have Mr. Brian Barnhill on here tonight. Thanks, man, for signing up and attending. We appreciate it.
Invite should be a lot of fun.
No, you belong here, my man. Clearly. So, like I said, we'll open invite just for whenever. But I don't know if you other guys have questions for Brian. Otherwise, I'm just going to let him freestyle for a minute on and explain exactly what his business is, what he does. But everybody needs to go check out tunertools.com, because I've never found such a comprehensive site for stuff that tuners need. So I don't know, tell us about it, man. How'd you get started?
Yeah, that was kind of the idea. So like I was telling you guys before we got started here, I was background, my family's about racing. I think I was 5 years old. My dad pointed at a dirt bike and said, "Hey, go race that." And that kind of much to probably my mom's dislike. I started racing motocross and supercross and championships and stuff like that. And it just kind of, we've been a car family. That was, a passion for us, and it's what we did as a family every weekend, sometimes 3 times a weekend. So one thing my dad was always big on is, do something, create something. Don't just work for someone and have an idea. And the big thing was find a niche and fill it. That's what he tells us all the time. We had a couple businesses growing up, a car audio store. I grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth area up until right before high school when I moved to New England. And they owned a car audio store, and that was they did that for a while before my dad got relocated for his day job. And he wanted to open another business, and we were just chatting ideas. And I was into tuning and all this diagnostic stuff. And my dad was an old school big block guy, and he started seeing what we could do with EFI, and I was like, this is awesome. And I showed him data logging and diagnostics, and he was like, oh, you mean I don't have to scratch my head and pull out 1 million gauges? So this kind of went from there. And honestly, the name is what started the business. Is I was looking for this tuner stuff and trying to come up with a name, and Tuner Tools wasn't taken. It sounded like a good idea. It was every tool a tuner needed. That was the idea. So we kind of started from there back in 2006. I was actually still in college. I actually landed in Australia for a 3-month study abroad thing the day we launched the business. So it just started it was supposed to be a small online thing, fill in this niche. And, as EFI got bigger and standalones got bigger and I got more into tuning and more into racing, Formula S80 through college, for those of you familiar with it, was a big deal.
Yep.
That was an obsession for me for 3 years basically. We just kind of started from there. It's literally from my parents' dining room table, and it just kind of kept growing from there. And my background is actually I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Ulster Polytechnic Institute. I worked in engine design for an OEM for a while. And actually I just started that job when my father went in the hospital, and when he passed away, it was either, keep working and do this and close the business, or, take that over. And, I couldn't let that close. And that's kind of what started where we are today. And then, as I took over, more and more tuning, my road race and our drift stuff, which, if anyone wants to talk drifting, we can get into that later. But it just kind of sort of spiraled from there, I guess. And, we kind of got away from stuff for a while, and just, within the last 6 months, we got back to just focusing on just tuning data. That's the stuff I like. I'm a huge data nerd. And that's really every product on our site. That's why it's there. It's something that we've used or we like, and something we need to use. We think people need.
It looks like you sell an interface for every single OEM developed vehicle. I mean, I'm guessing you're going to say, no, it's not all of them. Holy crap, is that a lot of different connectors? And
the fact that guys like all the guys at over at HP Tuners, Eric Brooks has done so much for development for them.
Eric rules. He won't get on here, but Goldaddy did. But we're trying to get Brooks on here.
They've added so much support that it just makes it easy. I mean, you used to need. I was back in the LT1 edit days. I know I probably don't look that old, but
you don't.
Bricking LT ECUs, having a stack to try to get one to tune. I've actually got a Haltech F7 sitting behind me here, which Chris Law and the guys over at Haltech office told me they don't even have at their U.S. office. I've actually got two of them that we stole off an old FSA car because they wanted to throw them out.
Circa late 90s, right?
92, I think.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I saw the dual boot DOS machine kicking around here to be able to get into old school M48s and stuff like that. So yeah.
I mean, I don't know where else I can get HP tuners for a Gen 3 LS, and then I can also on the same website get a Ducati interface kit to tune my Ducati. That's a lot of work you've done.
My wife and I both ride Ducatis. I've had a bunch of buddies with one. I live 4 hours from the closest dealer. I didn't want to pay someone to work my bike, and it's not all our work. There's so much work out there, and we just started putting together all that stuff and digging into it.
I'm sure you're just doing diagnostics.
Oh, yeah. I bought my 1098, and I think I had it home for 20 minutes before I had the ECU cracked and everything on it. So yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to just put everything in one spot. Really, it's just this, like Scott said, we've known each other for a while. The tuning community is so small. Just knowing the people and knowing what questions to ask, to know what products you need, because there's probably 100 other stuff out there for GM or whatever. But to have this small collection that can do this really broad range, and something like HP Tuners is a good one where you used to have, you'd have to go STT for Ford tuning or maybe some Sniper if you had a specific year. Now there's so many tools that can do one car, a bunch of cars, that it just makes it easy to do it. Whereas back in the day you'd have, I don't remember how many OBD1 between all the J3 port stuff on Mustangs and all the LD1 tuning stuff between LT1s and even the 3 different version LT1 edit connections. It's so much easier now than even 5-10 years ago, even when we started. So we're at 13 years now. So the product market has come a long way. Even now, I guess, even for a handheld, there used to be 30 part numbers for Diablo Sport tuners. Now there's 3 different Intunes that cover 90% of the domestics out there. And it just makes it real nice to make a site where you can find everything easily. It's a little bit more work on the back end because now your product application chart is, 1,000 lines long. But as long as we get that data there, then everything's good. even throwing that out there, and we've got a few things on there on our site. We do more than tuning. We do have some fuel system stuff on there. We've got sensors and all the other, like you said, the tools you need, widebands, knock detection. We can get into that in detail. I have some interesting ideas and thoughts on some stuff that I see. I'm curious what your guys' opinion is, but we do sell injectors. I know Tom's been on here before. I don't think he's here today. We actually really big fans of Tom's injectors. It's what we run in all our race cars.
Oh, Tom Sewell. Yeah, of course. Same deal. Tom is our guy here. Where is he? Is he not trying to show up tonight?
You know what? Actually, I need to ask him because he's supposed to be cleaning a set of our race injectors.
Right. That's what he's doing. Is he's hiding from you? Because, dude, normally he's on here. I'd say 80% of the time he makes the show.
I'd say it's not his fault. Our driver just told me he didn't send him out till today instead of 2 weeks ago when he told me. So, you know.
Still Tom's fault. Let's blame Tom.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there. And I think the big thing for us, too, and in what I was telling you guys before, the big problem we see is education. And, you know, people are scared to tune. They think it's this black art or it's this terrible thing. And they're so scared to do it. So, you know, I'm going to break my engine. And, you know, I don't want to tell you you're not, because you have to know what you're doing. You have to understand it. But really, the basics are super simple. And it's great to see the amount of information out there now between Facebook groups. And, you know, we can chat about that. That's a pro and a con, you know, getting the right information out there. But yeah, there's so much information out there to get started, even if it's just a, you know, hold your hand guide just to get your feet wet. And I mean, that's how I started. What I know now versus even when I tuned our last FSE car that I tuned, a million times better. And there's guys out there. I'm still just, I can make our race cars run. I got the things I do. There's some of you guys that are doing stuff that are so far beyond, especially when you're getting crazy into engine dynamics and stuff like that. But the information's out there, so there's really no excuse. That's one thing on our site too. If you go to our pages, there's a knowledge base where we've got links to the Realtuners stuff. We've got links to some of our stuff, and we try to be really active in all the Facebook groups in responding to stuff. And kind of the big thing for us too is, you know, everyone just wants to throw a parts cannon at something. And, you know, the number one question we get asked, and this is something I'd be curious to hear what you guys say, is, well, what's the best blank for my car? ECU, wideband, whatever. Yeah, I know why you're using that, Scott. And you get everyone that says, oh, it's, you know,
it's the one I got for cheap or free.
Yeah, exactly. Someone wants to sell.
Well, and it used to be, they all do the same thing. I saw somebody posting that a couple months ago, and I was like, nope, you can't say that either, because some of them just suck. But
did somebody say free?
Yeah.
I heard free.
It's Dahlquist. He dialed in because he heard free.
I've been eating for free all day. I had free French toast. I had free steak. Now I'm having free beer. Thought I'd call in and say hi.
Well, you deserve it. It's your birthday.
Well, thank you.
And happy
and
birthday.
Yet I'm stuck here working.
Happy birthday, Evans, too, man. They both got birthdays.
Yeah, happy birthday to Scott Evans, but I told everybody in advance I was going to be an idiot today and skip out.
I think Mark's been drinking all day.
Drunk dialing, is that what this is?
Basically, yeah.
I tried to skip out, but
Not the first
Scott
time.
Clark couldn't get his shit together in time today.
Truth. I was supposed to run the podcast tonight, but I was busy doing, I was real busy with
lots of paperwork
stuff. Yeah, lots of paperwork that shouldn't have to be doing. And then, so I was supposed to run the podcast, and I suck at life because Evans, now we officially have it set up so that, when I had to take my little vacation, Evans ran he engineered the podcast, and he changed it up, basically is running it just like a full-on radio station would do. So there's audio cues, everything's automatic and programmed, and you can change out the commercials one at a time, and it's all modular, and it's wicked and it's sick, but it's also hard as shit to learn if you're not a super engineer like this guy's been for his whole life. So I think I'm ready to drive it.
I spent like 3 days with Evans, and I'm like, he's done it before once or twice.
Yeah, I know. I went to Evans and visited where he works and stuff. It's like, oh, that's the microphone that Celine Dion uses? Cool. You know, but anyway, so I should have been running the podcast, but Evans has been a goddamn superhero for the last 3 months on this thing, and I'm going to try it from my place next week, I promise. So maybe. We'll see.
Well, happy birthday, Scott Evans, and I wanted to check in and say hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I'm out with my buddies right now, but I wanted to check in and say hi.
Is Matt Adams with you?
Yes, he is.
All right. No,
You want me to get Matt on?
No, I really don't. Just tell him hi. Tell his fiance I said hi, man.
I will. Hey, Matt got a new job, you know.
I heard.
He got a new job, so he's all happy. And
right.
I got some of my racer buddies here. We're having a good time. So
good, man. We'll talk about it offline. Now get off the phone, you drunk son of a bitch, and have a good night.
Coincidentally, we have a slide up that was Throttle's performance while Mark was talking. Look at that.
What did we have?
Pure coincidence, but it worked out. One of the Throttle's performance pictures scrolled past while Mark was talking.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
Well, badass. You guys all have a good night. I'll be back on next week.
All right.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Happy birthday,
Mark. Oh, I love him. He's hilarious. You know he's been out drinking all afternoon. He's
probably
up in
most
Fargo.
of the day.
Deserves it. I mean, he works like 90 hours a week. If you guys got to know Mark, for those of you that don't know Mark, I don't even know how he finds time for us, but
his wife is the real hero.
Yeah, exactly. I did well, and they're cool people. If you ever get a chance to do work with Mark or have him build you a motor or dyno an engine or something like that, he's just he's a different cat, and he's really cool, really good dude to know. But happy birthday, man. Anyway, so we were all interrupting Brian here.
Maybe we can get into nitty gritty. But yeah, one of the things, there's actually a question just popped up. It's kind of on that.
Go for it. Start knocking some questions out and shout out to anybody you want.
Kind of on the, when someone asks what's the best X, and this is one problem I see. That's a big one on wide bands. And it's the someone's asking, it's like Andrew Williamson, why the Innovate kills sensors in the 80 series don't.
I saw that.
Yeah, so, and that's one thing I've gone back and forth, and I'm not really sure it's an Innovate versus AM thing. I do think the Innovate tends to be more sensitive to it. But what I've seen, I think, Scott, when they first came out, I remember you going on a rant about this.
I really liked Innovate, but I had problems only with everybody that used the 4.9 sensors.
Right, yeah. So, and then there's a couple things to that, and I've had a chat with Court Charles over at Innovate and some of the guys over there.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some changes there.
Court's a good buddy. Yeah.
Court was actually good buddies with my dad. That's how I knew him. And then my dad passed away. Court helped me with a bunch of stuff when we were kind of changing everything. So yeah, I guess part of the thing there is the root of it is the 4.9 it's just, I don't want to call it a more fragile sensor because it's more robust in a lot of ways. It can take a lot more heat. But it's the ceramic element or the zirconia element in it is something like 1/10 the thickness of the 4.2. And the 4.9 was designed for the OEM world. It's what we use when I worked in the OEM. And they're great when the engine's dialed in and, it doesn't blow smoke and there's no
when there's no wet fuel getting spit on it when you wick thread.
Right. And there's the biggest thing too is they don't turn the wideband sensor on until everything's up to temp, and it's a calculated valve temp, so there's no moisture in the exhaust. So there's kind of a two-part problem here. So anything, and one thing we've suggested guys do when you can. So my time attack car does this, for example. It's not really much worth talking about. It's a Miata because it's cheap to drive and I don't get much time. My Turbo LS car because it was fun, and it every time I was up the track, I spent more time worrying about it or thinking I was going to kill myself. So we dropped 800 horsepower and went back to a Miata because I can afford to drive that. But yeah, one thing we'll do is we'll actually wait until we reach a certain coolant temp or certain runtime, and we'll turn we will wait to turn the power on to the wideband until that's warm, so we know the moisture is out of the exhaust stream.
And that's helped.
Things, yeah, if you're running a really rich mixture, especially if you're learning a tune, you're leaving it really, really rich, or you're getting a lot of blow by, whether it's because you're boosted setup on stock rings or you're just burning oil. That's just going to be really bad for the sensor, and no wideband is going to last a while with that. Now, one thing I will say is the Innovate stuff seems to be very sensitive to any sensor error at all. That's good and bad. If your sensor's going bad at all, you definitely want it to tell you. There's probably times the Innovate is definitely more sensitive to that, and there's things that hurt that. Wiring is one of them. They really want to see a clean power and a clean ground. Battery ground recommended typically, and I know that's a big argument. And that's one thing, and I've used a lot of Innovate 4.9s and had good success with them. But that said, in a boosted application, most people are still putting them 18, 24 inches from the collector and everything like that, or from the port or from the turbo. I've seen 4.9s last pretty much right at the the exhaust valve for quite a while, they can take a lot of heat, and that actually helps keep the moisture off of them as long as they don't have moisture on them while they're heating up. So that's one thing that helps. Speaking to the heater strategy, I know there was a firmware update on the Innovate, and that really helped. I think part of it's just Innovate airs on one side and AEM airs on the other. The same as, you've got AEM is no free air cal and Innovate is, and the free air cal thing really bugs a lot of people. And this really comes down to back to what's the best unit for me. And, if you're killing a lot of sensors because, you've got a rich mixture or something like that, understand that maybe the Innovate stuff is going to be more sensitive to that, especially running a 4.9. So you might want to go back, and the upside of the Innovate is all of their units are backwards compatible with 4.2. And I've put 4.2s on plenty of boosted LS cars just because they're getting blow by. They're stalking LS guys that are trying to push as much power out of them. There's only so much you can do. And,
Yeah, no, they totally are going to get blow by. Those guys are going to put 35 pounds of boost on a stock LS or whatever. That's just part of the more gross power you're making, the more cubic inches, the more shit you're going to have coming down the pipe. So,
right, exactly. So, we're back to, personally, I really like the Innovate stuff, and I've used it for a long time, and it'll be a recommendation in a lot of cases. But that's the same thing. Anytime someone says, "What's the best X for my car?" It's like, well, what's your setup? What are you doing? We're getting a lot of blow by. If you're tuning really rich, you're going to go through some sensors. That's going to suck. It's the same thing. Is your sensor a pain in the ass to get to, or is your time worth it so much that you don't want to do the free air cal? Then maybe a PLX or an AEM is going to be a better fit for you. Now, I understand. I've got some complaints I've had with the AEM stuff in the past. And the X series actually is a leap forward. A lot of the bugs and stuff like that are fixed. One thing I still don't like about AEM is when they fail to showing stoic rather than showing an error. So if you're cruising and something's going crazy, especially if you're running closed loop lambda control off your widebands, and you don't have a safety in your ECU and you're cruising and it's outputting that it's stoic and it's not, especially if your VE-nap's way off because you relied on your closed loop too much or something like that. It's just not the best default mode. That probably bugs me more as a nerd and engineer and a design guy.
No, that's a killer way of looking at it. Yeah.
I actually prefer it to default to that because if your tune is right, then you don't have to worry about it. If your tune is off and it fails to a lean point, it makes it stupid fat, which is, that's fine too. I would.
You just got to be prepared to know how it's going to fail.
If it fails to super rich, then you blow something up because it would be constantly taking away fuel.
Yeah, but Scott, in that case, I'm used to using ECUs where I set a minimum and maximum, and I make sure that the failure mode super lean or rich defaults my closed loop and to not do anything. So what Brian's really pointing out here is you got to know how that shit's going to go when it fails.
Yeah. Right.
But can I back up for just 30 seconds?
Matter.
Let me add just one thing. It's funny. I know you're observing, guys are having these problems and they think it's an Innovate problem. Holy crap. What's funny is Innovate has continued to be the most reliable widebands for me. I didn't even have trouble back in the early LC1 days when a bunch of people were bitching. I'm like, man, I followed the instructions. I talked to their tech support maybe twice a year because I always come up with dude, they were capable of answering questions about what air fuels I should expect to see on a 2-stroke 710 cubic inch per cylinder diesel engine with supplemental methanol supplemental dry fuels added. So we were playing around with natural gas, with propane, but CNG mostly. But anyway, it was funny. I had questions about what I would expect to see, and they were able to answer those questions for me. I had just always been a fan of Innovate. And I'll tell you one thing. I did have problems with the 4.9 sensors, but I also saw like Coyote guys having problems with factory ECU, and so I didn't think it was an Innovate thing. But let me tell you, this is a funny story. I have an Ultra Street car. It's nitrous motor, V8, 408 cubic inch, I think. Big shot of nitrous, gigantic cam that the engine doesn't even get its shit together till about 5,500 RPM. And by most people would call it max effort. The engine builder would not, but pretty crazy shit. Dude, it's got 8 LC2s that Court gave us to test out. 8 LC2s, but it came with the 4.9 sensor. And I was like, oh man, these are never going to work. Dude, he's spraying, like an extra 900 horsepower of nitrous through this thing. On top of it makes like 850, at the motor, at the flywheel on its own on motor. And I'm like, there's no way those things are going to live. Dude, the only thing that hurt any sensors in that thing was in the middle of the second season We were doing closed loop per cylinder tuning on this V8, and it needed it bad because it was a plate nitrous deal. They got a weight break for running a plate in Ultra Street, and it only hurt an O2 sensor when it sent chunks of piston flying out the exhaust, and it actually FOD'd.
Like actual physical.
Yeah. And I mean, so I had to, I was like, and here's me bad mouthing the LSU 4.9s. And it's clearly some cases, these things are super badass, and other cases they don't work right. So like Brian says, is instead of being a douche about it, I should have said, hey, I'm doing something here that some of them like, and something that some of them don't. And dude, I can't believe the EGTs. We've got EGTs and O2s per cylinder on this relatively wild small block nitrous motor for drag racing. And it's interesting to see those sensors live and work and do. It's interesting to see the closed loop corrections that come off the data that comes off this engine. It's ridiculous. But
and, I think really is it honestly keeping them hotter. I think that's part of it is I think if you get a big fluctuation in the heat, so like honestly put them somewhere hot, keep them hot. Just make sure they don't get hot and start to warm up until there's no moisture there. Keep the moisture off them and actually keep them warm. Don't make that heater work too hard. And they seem to last almost forever. I mean, it's an OEM sensor. It is a little bit different. The 4.2 was a motorsports design sensor, more or less. The 4.9 was 100% OEM sensor. And the 4.2 was used in Volkswagens and stuff like that. But its initial design was motorsports and R&D. And the 4.9 was designed to be an OEM level sensor. It's what Honda, Toyota, it's what all those guys use in the OEM. So it's different design requirements, and some of that speed and stuff like that is really what's there. The big thing about it, and if we go back to, how does your wideband fail? To be honest, if you're really talking about all this, and now we'll go back to, almost any decent standalone. You need an HP tuners now if you get the Pro add-on. They all have CAN bus inputs. So if you're really worried about how your wideband fails, run a CAN bus wideband. AEM has it. It's supposed to be coming on the Innovate stuff. I hope Court's listening. I bitched at him for about 4 years about getting real CAN bus on their stuff.
I've used their serial interface for the Megasport stuff for a long time, and it worked fine.
Yeah,
and it was same.
Great.
Are you just basically saying get off the analog because of offset concerns,
right,
which is correct?
Between offset, that takes your wiring out. Yeah, I don't have to worry about if you got this ground offset now. Error. Now, when the unit outputs an error, it sees error, not just when
a weird voltage
error, the analog goes to 0 volts, so 7.35 AFR. If instead it throws that error code out over CAN bus and it knows, hey, let's drop out a closed loop in your ECU, or it just doesn't see a signal, it's way safer and way more controllable.
Yeah.
And that's
way really, better to have an error code.
What's that?
I said always way better to just have an error code when it actually fails.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Especially too, you're looking at your data, and I see, oh, hey, in my data log, I see that this CAN bus message was an error code. Other than, why didn't AFR all of a sudden start to go rich or lean or whatever? So now instead of going back, it's especially on at drag racing or drifting. Sometimes we've got no time to pull data. I'm actually, either riding on the door of the car, running with it, trying to pull a data log off because we're so limited on practice time that anything that takes me more than 10 seconds to find in a log is a huge deal. And then that's one thing where we talk about too, what ECU do you need, what dash, what logger. I see a lot of dash questions recently, and that's one thing I brought up a lot is, everyone says they don't want logging, but, I love a lot of ECUs, but pulling log off them isn't always the easiest. The AEM dash I'll throw out there because they hooked us up on a dash for our from the drift car, which actually runs a Haltech Elite 2500. I pull those logs in, it takes about 3 seconds. And I think that the ADU, the ECU Masters logging stuff is roughly the same. And shout out because their dash, you're looking for them. Their dash is like programmable. That's one that drives me crazy on dashes is especially the race pack, flash the dash, then you figure out a unit was wrong and you gotta go back and redo everything. So there's a lot of options there, but yeah, that ability to log to dash and just, again, selecting the part that's right for your application, not just because someone said this worked for me. I'd love to sell everybody the most expensive ECU that's got every feature, but if you're running a 4AG 4-cylinder with, you still got a distributor on there and in batch fire. I don't need to sell you, the top of the line Haltech ECU or a Motec, and
I need to sell you some coil packs and a crank trigger, and then sell you a better ECU.
How about I just get you on any standalone that fits your budget? But vice versa too. Just because a standalone is really cheap, and might have a lot of features, doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you either. And one thing we like to use is you can't bench race ECUs because certain things like usability, flexibility of inputs, and a lot of that's, user preference, but there's certain things that can't be handled there. And, that's one thing, the first question I ask anyone when they're asking me about an ECU is, who's tuning the car? If you're tuning the car,
what's his choice?
Right? Yeah. So, and they'll still want my buddy tune X. And, I deal with a lot of ECUs, Link, ECU Master, and Haltech are some more big ones.
Do you like the ECU Master? I have yet to run into one up here.
I do. It's a mixture of things, and Zach over at ECU Master.
I was going to say we got to get Zach Denny on here to talk about it at some point in time. We will.
We run into a bunch of drift events and stuff like that, and it's a good ECU that for the money, the features you get is awesome. And the big thing for me is their CAN bus. It's unreal the amount of CAN bus they can do in there. They're so CAN bus focused that it makes
that's cool,
very flexible.
Yeah, it saves you a bunch of IO. That's
right,
a smart way to focus. That's just
IO is the real estate. I think people don't realize it, and I mean, because people ask, I put a Haltech Elite 750 on my Miata, and it's like I said, it's the only thing that's done to that is the head's decked 50 thousandths on it's on E85, so I needed flex fuel because we're on a pump E85 because it's cheap. But the flexibility there, and that's a conversation we can have too about a part I recommend for everybody on flex fuel. But I ran out of IO. I'm actually beyond IO because my CAN bus wideband. I dug out of the bottom of a box that I didn't even know I owned, so it's probably in that box for 4 years. And surprise, it doesn't work anymore. I think we had a flooding issue at one of our buildings once, and I unfortunately think that was a casualty. So I actually had to take my fuel pressure sensor off and put an analog wideband in for now until I can get a new CAN bus wideband on the car. I'm completely tapped out of IO on what's pretty much a simple car. The only extras I have is oil pressure, and I don't think that should ever be an extra. If you're setting up an ECU and you're not running oil pressure and you've got more than $200 in your engine, it's silly. I mean, what's a Honeywell pressure sensor cost? $80 now to make sure everything's good. But I was running fuel pressure.
Honeywell shit, man. Go hit the junkyard for some LS stuff for nothing. You can't kill those damn sensors. Yeah,
right.
That and fuel pressure is a big one. I always recommend guys run. I see so many issues, and I'll throw a fuel pressure sensor on something. It's like, oh, well, why is your fuel pressure tapering off, or what's going on here? Not just, diagnostics, there's safeties and stuff like that. And like you were talking about earlier, when you can start doing fuel pressure referenced correction factors and stuff like that, which, even you guys are doing on Holly, it's the same thing in Link and in Haltech ECUs, you're so programmable that you can set the same thing up even if it's not there. So that's just a big one that makes a huge difference in consistency for what's really $80 at the end, or maybe $150 if you buy the titanium sensor. It's those are two big ones I see that get overlooked. But yeah, IO is a big one, and ECU Masters is great on that. And I mean, the classic is $899. It's really hard to beat at the price. The one thing I will say about it is its software probably isn't the most user friendly. It's not the quickest for me to use, and I have my preference. I tuned Haltech and a couple other ECUs for years, and it was really used to that. And it is different, and that's the conversation. I think I've told this Zach to Zach in person at PRI and stuff like that. It's great software. It's very usable. It's not going to stop you from using it, but it's not the most intuitive per se. So if you're trying to learn to tune, tuning it, and the biggest thing is setup, and that's a big problem I see is. And it's a problem we see on Megasquirt, which is why you mentioned I only have to plug and play Megasquirts on the site. It's because those are I have to support the stuff in the day.
Sure.
If I have to spend 10 hours getting someone to set something up.
Hey, check it out, people. Here's a guy who deals in this. Here's a guy who deals in this stuff who actually supports what he sells. Imagine that.
Yeah, that's a big deal. One of our things is, like I said, we stand by our standalones. Anyone that buys a standalone from us, we will do up to 4 hours of support time to get them a base map going, to get their car started. We'll remote in and make sure it works. So that way you're not just buying ECU and hoping it's set up right. Usually it takes way less time than that to get you started. But
it takes me about an hour max. That's what I give guys a free hour. Yep.
Spend some time one-on-one educating people, building that relationship with our customers rather than just throw a part out there and hope it works. But yeah, I mean, that's a bunch of ECUs we sell are there's a reason we don't sell just one brand, because it's not, one size fits all. And where we talk about setup on ECU masters, and especially the non-plug and play Megasport stuff, messing your setup, the car may start and it may seem fine. But you can have this issue, whether it's in your injector dead times. That's one problem if you're not running the Tuner Studio Pro. You get 1 point injector dead time, and they're not necessarily linear, and it can cause a huge headache if that's off. There's a bunch of little things like that, correction factors. Tuning isn't hard, but you get one thing off a little bit and you bake that into your map, you can be chasing that forever. So if you get a setup wrong, if your setup's a little bit harder to understand why, that can be real frustrating for people. So when you're setting up an ECU, and especially if it's something you want to make changes on, you're going to do it yourself, that's when usability starts coming in, and how much time do you want to spend learning versus how much time do you just want to tune to make your car run. That's why if you ask what's the best ECU for my pick from 12-cylinder LS engine to the V12 LS is out of Australia. Those things are badass if you haven't seen them. To I've got a single-cylinder dirt bike engine. What's the best ECU for me? It is going to matter. I mean, even down to in my Alpha N and my individual throttle bodies. So what's the strategy here? Do I need something blended, or can I run it pure Alpha N? Really, what's going on there? It's not a simple question, and that's one thing in some of the Facebook groups. And Scott, I know you probably all you guys see those. It's the same question. In one group in particular, I'm thinking of. I think every day is that question. My first response is always, well, who's doing the tuning? What's your setup?
Right.
What's
Let
your
that
budget?
guy pick. You shouldn't even be. If you're asking and you're not sure, then the other, let someone else make the decision.
That's a hard one for me. It's easy to say, well, should you really be tuning your engine? Because my goal is, what we say is our mission statement. Tuning should be accessible to everybody. Now, the downside of that doesn't mean everyone should do it. Talk about body work.
Sure. Body and paint. That'd be the real art form in a car. Yeah.
I suck at it. I'm willing to pay someone to do that. And I realize that. But tuning, everyone can learn to tune, but you have to want to. And for those guys that want to, it doesn't matter what skill you have. I may facepalm at the end of the day, but I get it. I mean, I'd rather you ask a dumb question and learn than, just assume that you can't do it, or not ask the question and mess up. The only problem I have is when you ask a question you don't want to learn, you just want to have your hand held through it, and because at the end of the day, that's not going to help anybody. You really have to understand.
There's the do-it-yourselfers, and then there's the do-it-for-me's.
Right. And that's the problem with some of the really, really budget options you'll see thrown out there when they're recommended just because of a budget, without taking into account what's the end result going to be here. You can buy this budget thing, but it's not good for who sold it to you. It's not good for you. You may save all this money, but at the end of the day, if that part doesn't work for you, then everyone failed. And as someone that sells this and someone that believes in it, not because you don't sell it because I decided to do this for a living. That would be a stupid decision. I went from an engineer to this. So I do this because I love it, and we want to see people learn to tune. So. If I want to see you be happy and learn and use the product we sell you, we need to sell you something that's within your skills. And that goes for everything from wide bands to knock detection to ECUs to anything. So whenever you're buying any part for your car, if the person you're buying from or recommending it can't give you a good reason, even if that's just, hey, in my opinion, I like this software better, in understanding that, hey, this is my opinion. I get that some people may think differently, but if you're just getting that because someone said this worked for me, then yeah, I get it. It may be a cheap part, but at the end of the day, is that really helping your program, helping your car, or what
Sure.
your goal?
One of the biggest things we tell people, especially when they're very specifically drag racing guys, is when they go to the track and they need help on something, buy an ECU, buy products that the other guys that go to your local track also deal with, so that you have some customer support there local.
Great way to get some help.
That's a huge one.
Because if you go somewhere and you buy the biggest, badass, most bestest, newest thing out, and nobody's used it except
Completely
for
different
some guy
box
in
that nobody
Australia,
Right.
Yeah.
And then if
What
nobody
What kind of
uses
idiot
it,
would do that, Scott Evans?
hey, we got people who've done it. Well, there's a difference between learning and already knowing how to tune with it.
I want to rewind what you just said because Evans went out and bought himself an M-Tron for a
did.
drag race car.
I
Before
did, but
he
there's a
bought
big
it,
difference.
You couldn't find anybody using it, but now Oplowski and those guys have guys running it and going fast and setting records. So good lucky roll of the dice there, but that was pretty funny. I like the M-Trons that I got.
There was a lot of research that went into that before I bought it too, and me being a tuner makes a difference than if I was just some new guy looking for an ECU that I wanted to learn.
Oh yeah.
On. If I was learning on an ECU, it would have been a total different look at things, you know.
Sure, you wouldn't have known to check into it. I liked it. I got stuck doing a couple Subarus one day with it, and I was like, "Holy shit!" It reminded me of Vipec, the system I'd never heard of that was really easy to use.
So yeah, Vipec and Link are the same company. Actually, that's a whole. So Vipec is kind of gone as a name,
right?
There's a few power sports standalones that say because of his name. Really, it was kind of I've seen it with a couple other Australian brands. They don't understand that. Hey, we're big in Australia. Why aren't we selling elsewhere? And it's people just didn't recognize the name. So that was honestly, it was like a Lexus Toyota thing. It was to have this badge that was this high end.
Gotcha. All I know is it worked good for me. The Vipec plug and plays I'd worked on previously, like 6 or 7 years ago.
The Link plug and plays are actually identical. It's the same thing.
Nice.
Link is made a big push in the U.S. with support and a lot of marketing money spent. But Tori over at Link is our rep, and he's a good dude as well at all the FD events. And I think I know both Haltech and Link are going to have representatives at I think most of the FD stuff. Probably some of the other guys, and that's when we talked about support. Those are two companies. And there's a bunch of others, but that are really pushing support throughout all the U.S. Not just hey, give us a call, but these are guys that know the products that race. They've got drifters and guys on their crews in Time Attack. Tori's a Time Attack guy. That's how I know him. That are at the event ready to help you if anything goes down. And I've done that for those guys as well, help them out at events, and that goes a long way. And that kind of the same thing for both those companies too. It's kind of a unique thing being Australian. If you call at least the Haltech number, they automatic roll their phones over to the Australian number and vice versa. So you can almost get 24-hour tech support through the week from those guys. So even if they're not at your track, and I know Link, I think has I'm pretty sure their number will do the same thing. Or they have they have a separate number that you can call from the U.S. but sends you to the New Zealand office. You have to call a separate number. That may have changed, and I apologize to Tori about not checking that beforehand. That may have changed, but that's things. And it's talking again to ECE Masters is roughly a smaller company. That's pros and cons. You can get a lot of custom boutique stuff from them, and
man, I know Zach's been getting features added. The guys that run that, it's from Poland, okay, he's had such good input with them that his end users basically get to tell them, hey, put this feature in there. That system was a lot simpler 4 and 5 years ago.
Those guys have a really cool little CAN bus keyboard thing too that I like. That's like you can get buttons and switches to do stuff, which is kind of cool.
So that's real nice, and all that stuff interfaces with almost any other. They've got it's kind of like how the AEM dash is, where they've got so much CAN bus predefined that if you want to use that PMU16 and a touchpad with your Haltech or your Link or any other CAN bus enabled, and it's awesome for opening up I/O, especially
badass.
This whatever ECU, this mid-range ECU is fine for me, and then a year later you've got 10 adjustable.
It's funny. We're generally drag racers around here on this show, right? So, and it's interesting to see, like, you don't see too much Link or ECU Master at a Ducks race. In fact, I don't see any. But you go to the Formula Drift stuff, and then those guys dominate, and they got reps on site and everything. I mean, it's interesting. We need to do a little cross-pollination here. It just makes me think we need to have guys like Zach on here more, and guys like you more often. And we need to see somebody put a Link on a radio versus the World car and do really well with it. That would be badass.
They're powerful ECUs, and it's part of it. The market there's guys that are everyone runs out of the track, everyone knows how to do it. It's easy to set up, and then there's always gonna be some of that. But there's plenty of guys other places running ECU Masters and Link stuff and being successful with it. So there's no one cookie cutter answer for that, and that's one thing we tell people. Budget's part of it, and I'm actually working on an article right now talking about ECU selection. I mentioned budget as the first thing, and my first line is budget should not be your first answer, though, other than it's can I afford an ECU or not. And don't pick an ECU because it fits your budget. Pick an ECU because it's the one that's right for you. Now, if it's not in your budget, that just means you can't afford a standalone, and yeah, it's a hard cookie to swallow. But that comes
save up for another couple months. Yeah,
right. And that's the problem I think with tuning and standalones. That's the last thing people think of. They go, "Oh, I built this whole car. I spent $20,000 on my engine. Oh crap, I'm out of money. Oh, let's run this $300 standalone that some guy built in his mom's basement that has all these features." And yeah, I mean, that's great, but is it usable? So yeah, that's definitely an interesting aspect. All that, and one thing we push on everything. Standalones is a big part of that, but really any part you're using, we can get into other stuff. We sell one big thing. We sell a couple things. And these are from Link because they're one of the companies that still makes a lot of it. They still make a lot of knock detection stuff between knock lights and their knock block, which is an audible knock detection system that works with both their G4 software. You can plug into the Link ECU, or you can just use it plugged in with headphones and audibly listen to knock, which is really nice. And that's one thing we see from a lot of tuners is a lot of new tuners is knock is this big thing they think they need. And watching knock detection is great, but
have you ever heard my talk about knock? The stuff I know?
have, and I'm curious to hear your bit on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great tools to have, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it's one of these you absolutely need it, especially for a guy that's maybe getting started. And I think the part like ignition timing and knock is what scares people. And the numbers, at least from the guys checking on it. So Haltech, for example. There are people actually using knock on ECUs that are enabled is in the single-digit percentage. So people with this tool aren't spending the time to set it up. One of the problems is you see a lot of guys street tuning. It's like, I got to check knock. I got to check knock. Well, what frequency are you at? You got to set this up for your engine. So, you got to go to a dyno. You've got to force the engine to knock. You got to set everything up. Then on top of that, you can even have all the right frequency. Now you got to set up your noise filter. And in some cases, our Formula Drift car, for example, I remember we set all it up. I had frequency. Everything was dialed in. We checked it with some crazy nice tools. As soon as I went to check it at anything over 2,000 RPMs, I can max out the filters and the knocks max out because we were running a 7.25 inch clutch on the trans in our car is actually straight out of a Penske Cup car. So all straight cut gears in the dog box, carbon fiber drive shaft, quick change rear end, no drivetrain, inertia at all, or barely anything. So I think revs like crazy. And as soon as you give it a blip at all, the knock sensors freak out, and it just wasn't worth it. So, tuning on, understanding what knock is and watching for it, whether that's, you see, torque change on the dyno or torque fluctuations, or, I'll probably, will cause some controversy here, the read versus not read plug guys. Not rely on one of them, but, it's another tool to have, and understanding what it means and what it doesn't mean. That comes back to the education. There's no one right answer here. But the big thing we see is people thinking that, it's the knock control on, I keep my engine from knocking. It's got to be set up right. And if you're not pushing to the edge, on a lot of cars, you'll see, you may see when you're tuning, if you see, 40 foot-pound gain with every degree of timing, then all of a sudden you see 10, you've already started to fall off. There's no point in pushing that engine any harder unless, you're trying to break a world record by a tenth of a mile an hour or something like that. So that's really understanding, again, what are my needs? How much am I paying for this ECU knock control? Or am I picking an ECU that's within my budget just because it has knock control versus something that has all these other features that I need? So again, understanding what you need and what you don't. And not saying knock control is a great thing. Understanding when it's knocking, using knock ears.
Requires you to do a little bit of setup and evaluation. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, if you're not understanding what you're using, and then, like I said, we definitely tuned plenty of cars without what you would think would be traditional knock control, just because even, like I said, on the FD car, even an audible knock detection system with headphones and stuff like that, there's just so much background noise that at the end of the day, it can only filter out so much. So you've got to have other tools. So part of that's, don't rely on this one tool too much. But again, understand, is this really something you need? Is that so critical to your ECU decision? And it's not just true on knock, but and that was one, I think, Scott, I saw one of your rants a while ago is, you've got to make the engine knock. There's a lot of issues with setting that up.
Yeah.
And then if you're on a load bearing dyno and you've got that up and you can do it at lower RPM, that's perfectly fine. But most of the people that are driving this decision is that really where you're going to go tune? if you don't have the tools, then you're paying for an ECU that's giving you a feature you're not using. You're paying for a tool you can't use because of other tools that you would also need. So yeah,
Sure.
you got, like you said, that the equipment you rattled off was in the tens of thousands of dollars to calibrate that knock setup, and a simple change rendered it inoperable. And been there as an engineer before. Something that was just a great idea, we rendered it inoperable for a $5 change, because in our case, this is an OEM. You're making hundreds of thousands of cars, so a 20-cent change was huge to us. That's when people say, "Oh, why is this piece here?" It's like, well, that part existed from this car, and that saved the company $1 million because it was 20 cents less or whatever, and that's a huge deal. That made your car portable. But
people blame engineers. People blame you guys, the OEM engineers. People blame you guys. Oh, this guy put the oil filter where I couldn't change it. They're just trying to screw us techs over. Yeah. No, you have no idea the stuff that the engineers have to be responsible for, like the shipping weight of something, because it's going to be made overseas, might save them $1 million.
There's
Don't get me
sides to that. So my wife is actually a suspension engineer as well. So she's into cars. She's got a 500 horsepower BMW 135i.
Holy crap, dude!
Yeah, so wow. we're both the same kind of, like, we hate those engineers, the guys that are truly just don't understand how to work on something. And we've worked with some in many fields. I want to punch those guys in the face more than those techs do, because they make me look bad. And then usually I wind up either I fix that or, make up for it. My wife has a story of a brake guy routed a brake line through a coil spring in the model. And she's like, "Hey, this doesn't pass clearance." Like, "What do you mean? It passes clearance?" I was like, "Well, the spring, that moves." And that was it was a 10-minute discussion, and she walked away because she just couldn't deal with it anymore. So yeah, we hate those engineers just as much. It frustrates us, if not more, because, we've got to fix that. And, funny story, my buddy, Andrew DiMartino, who's a marketing and wiring guy over at Haltech, I think I had known him for 2, maybe 3 years between drift stuff and then actually through his work at Haltech. Actually, I knew him before he ever worked at Haltech. At one point, someone was talking, I was talking about college and, I was an engineer or whatever. And he just looks at me and he goes, "Bullshit." I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "No, you're not an engineer." It's like, "Not smart." I mean, what? He's like, "No, I like you. I don't like."
I see you turning a wrench.
Yeah. I was like,
That's
"You know what you're doing. There's no way you're an engineer. I don't like engineers typically." I was like, "No, I know the guys you don't like. I don't like them either."
The best engineers definitely are the guys that get out in the field and work with the stuff and go race. And I knew some guys when I was working at Marshall Engines it's the Blueprint guys, and some of the engineers there, like, I think they almost on purpose will hire only engineers who are very mechanically inclined and into dirt track racing or drag racing or something like it. I just noticed that the engineering team that they hired, and it was a smart choice, because they made stuff that was sensible and affordable and cost effective, but reliable and easy to work on,
Yeah, I mean, that goes a long way. It's, again, back to, understanding what you're doing and the products you sell, whether it's, an engineer or the whatever the company you're buying your products from, or you're asking for your help, really being in there, understanding what they're doing day in and day out. And like I said, every single one of these products we've used on our personal cars, I've tuned anything from, turbo LS cars and some of this stuff to, a Miata or Formula C cars to, single cylinder dirt bike engines even. So yeah, it's really, again, it comes down to, working with people that understand what they're doing and, care about it, rather than just are there to, push a design out the door, get it off their desk, or sell a part or whatever. And never knock the motorcycle. Just says, watch your comment there. Yeah, I'm actually curious what your input on that is. So I guess when you're straight tuning on the strip, there's a part of that skill and, just knowing what works.
Knowing what works, because I noticed that, like, guys like me and Bewley or whatever, we'll all tend to tell everybody, like, this is how everything works in the world. And we don't always hit it, because the truth is we know our combos that our people come to us with. So that's drag racing stuff, forced induction or power adder. We have the benefit of always running the right fuel. But, I saw that I was arguing at one point a few years ago with the HP Academy guys. Well, then I find out they only tune high zoot turbo 4-bangers on gasoline limited race classes, road racing. So those guys are going to see knock.
Up until this year, time attack classes wouldn't let us run E85. there were some workarounds where guys were running crazy expensive race fuel. But yeah, there's some classes where that's limited. And, part of that, again, is what tools do you have? And part of it is if you're trying to push max horsepower out, and you don't have, and you can see knock when you tune on the dyno, but if you didn't get that, then yeah, you've either got to play it safe or use between reading spark plugs to even seeing, what's going down. Are we seeing, if you're logging G's or you're logging
crankcase pressure, coolant pressure, watch it with that.
You can start running pressure sensors and coolant pressures. Probably not as much on knock, I guess. You guys probably would know more than I would.
Since we tend to be power adder guys, it's tough to,
right.
Well, for drag racing, so we make way bigger power than the average guy for a much shorter period of time. You barely have a chance to even build heat in the motor.
Yeah.
Some of the racing you guys are doing, these guys are expected to endure. You'll do more engine on the rev limiter in a Formula Drift competition in one weekend than we'll see in 5 years at the drag strip.
So a good example on that, our driver, Jeff Donati, and a lot of other guys, I was big on him for years about, being on limiter, not being afraid of it and being wide open throttle. And in the last couple of years, he's been great about it. But I remember we were at Atlanta and I pulled his data log after one of his comp runs. And the most time he spent not wide open throttle, the most time he spent not wide open throttle was 0.3 of a second. The most time
that's hilarious.
Half a second. The most time he spent not on the throttle at all was 0.3 of a second, and that's because he had to check up and handbrake. And the 90% of the time is spent within 10% of the rev limiter, and that was
wow. That's a good application for scatter plots, actually, looking at that kind of stuff. That's interesting.
I'll have to put together some, unfortunately, I got to go through our log. There's some great data, and maybe this, like I said, I'll try to jump on some FD events.
Yep, come back anytime, man. We want to hear it because that's some cool data.
There's some amazing things. Actually, one of the craziest things I've done, and I fought it for the longest time, tuning the rev limiter because it sounds cool. And it's the stupidest thing. Yeah. And I fought it because, I would say, like in my road race cars, I don't want the car to know. I want it to make as much horsepower on rev limiter as possible so I can stay on the rev limiter. I don't have to shift. It's not going to nose down, come into a corner or something like that. And we did that. And, his response is, the car is super smooth on limiter. But he's like, man, it just doesn't sound cool. And there was a couple other drivers I did this for that just didn't like the sound of the rev limiter. One thing with our driver with Donati, we were at an event and we're just like, man, like we're getting knocked down on some of these scores, and the judge is saying we're not committed, and I'm looking at the data and I'm seeing wide open throttle, and I go and pull video of the car and I listened to it and I was like, oh, well, it's sitting there floating on limiter and it actually sounds like he's backing off the throttle. When what's happened is it's just floating right on rev limiter. I immediately changed it, just a little bit more fuel, a little bit less timing, and let it bump right up on the rev limiter. We gained 10 points just by changing our rev limiter.
That is hilarious.
Same line.
I'm not used to judged. Imagine getting judged on your rev limiter sound quality.
That
sounds like a sucky rule.
I love drag racing. That's like ice skating with cars.
It's still pretty cool.
It's judging. There's some getting over that, and you have to be okay with it. And there's times it sucks.
That's something cool that the engineer gets to contribute and do, though. You fixed it as the engineer. That's almost as cool as driving the car, in my opinion.
I still, to this day, that's a stupid. It's one of the stupidest reasons to tune rev limiter. I do it again every time. And it wasn't necessarily because we got judged on the sound of the rev limiter, but it's there's only so much going in there, and we've got our job at the end of the day. And this is true of any motorsport, any athlete. You're not an athlete. You're not a driver. You're an entertainer. We're there to entertain people and put people in the seats. If you're not doing that, I don't care if you're the fastest driver.
Yeah.
You can ask any racer.
That's
how that works for them.
Yeah. Why do you think Stevie Fast's program is so badass? Because he's a good entertainer. Yep.
That's really the job in the end of the day. And the judge can only see so much. So we're trying to sell our run to an extent. There's certain technical things that go in there, and you still have to be able to drive. But everything we can do to get that extra edge, I'll do every single one. Like I said, I've always told people that bitch about, that's cheating. If you let me, I'll win with the computer in any form of racing. I can every time. I think I went to it was a Motec seminar, and that's one thing. Like I said, there's two ways you can win. You can have the best car, or you can have the best driver. It's really hard to get the best driver, and then sometimes the best driver just isn't the best driver that day. it's a lot easier to have the best car and to know what you're using with your ECU. And that's back to, what tools do I need? Is this for my street car, or do I need every option to have every little trick in the book within what I'm allowed in the rules and then the gray area of the rules to be able to do that? And that's, a big thing there. And, people like to hate on the judging side of drifting, and I get it. And I was I don't want to say I was on that side because I was always a fan. But coming from, a race guy, I was, motocross, it's, who crosses that finish line first. It's definitely a different way of thinking, but at the end of the day, we still have to put a lot together, and there's certain things we have to do. And, there's silly little things that you do to get points or to get some advantage. And, that's what you have to do. That's the name of the game at the end of the day.
Right on. Holy crap. Look at the time. We sometimes shoot for an hour, and then sometimes we go as long as 2, but that was good. That was good discussion. Yeah. But we got to get you back on, man, to talk about more of this stuff and kind of cross-pollinate the crowds here. Because Billy and we're most of the guys that come to us are drag racers, right? Again, but I'm telling people, I've been to some of these drift events, and I used to, of course, I was a dumbass at first. I'm like, oh, drifting, that's stupid. And then I went to these events, and I'm like, wait a minute, there are guys here beating the shit out of their cars, breaking stuff, fixing it, upgrading it, and repeating.
LS Fest West, that was one of the big draws. We went
to LS Fest West, and it was all the drifting that was going on there. It was badass.
There were probably twice as many drifters as there were drag racers at that event.
Right.
Yeah, it's we've never made it to West, unfortunately. It's just it's so early in the season, and so many of our events. Our first 2 events are into April and early May in Orlando and Atlanta. For Formula Drift Pro.
It's tough to sneak that in there if you've got pro events. Yeah.
We definitely make LS Fest down in Bowling Green. Jeff's actually qualified first 2 years in a row. He loves that event, so we try to make it. Hasn't won yet, so there's a jacket you get for winning, and he doesn't care about winning. He just wants the jacket. He's super salty. He hasn't got that jacket yet, so I'll do that. It's there was 1 year it was pouring rain. That's the thing we run, like, unless there's thunder and lightning so bad it's not safe for track crew, then we run. So that's the true. That's true for anything else. And everyone thinks, it's so much easy. The rain is insane. The amount of changes we have to make to the car. So we still want grip. Our car makes a ton of grip. The problem is you have to make power to overcome that. So that's a huge. As we add more power, we add more grip because we're trying to go faster. But we still need the car to go where we want it on the track. And when we're being judged within inches to a cliff, and sometimes that cliff is a 6 foot tall concrete barrier. Having grip when you need it matters. So it's interesting, and it's not for everybody, but it's definitely entertaining. If you have a chance to ever make it to an FD event, or if you're in a little bit of everything, Grid Life. That's I run Time Attack. Our drift guys drive. Any guy that's into cars, man, Grid Life is a great event to make it to, and. I'm trying to see here if some of our drift guys jumped on here, and I wish I should have sent a few more links out. I'm sure we can get some of those guys on here. And
so one of the issues I think we're having is, I believe Scott Evans, you're firing off this video as an administrator of the Realtuners Radio podcast fan page, right? It's tying it to you. So people to see this video have to join the podcast fan page. Dude, I've been clicking off about one request every 5 seconds since we logged in for the last hour and 20 minutes. So as soon as they come in, I am. But that's one of the issues, is they have to be a member of that group to see it. Now, they won't have to be a member of that group to catch the actual podcast. What's funny is you'll get anywhere from 75 to 300 listeners live on the show. But by the time you get up in the morning, there will have been more than 1,500 downloads of the podcast that we load up here in an hour. And then in another 3 days, there'll be 4,500 downloads of it, and then pretty soon there'll be 15,000 of that one episode. So no fear. And we get rid of the audio glitches because Scott's recording it, and then we put up a file. So it works good.
Hey guys, while we still have Brian here, there's one question that kind of touched on what we've been talking about with the Formula D stuff from Family Blair, who says, how do you do the tune on the Formula D cars for riding the limit for so long? Is there anything special about that?
Oh man, so that's a car by car basis too, because maybe if you're an FD guy, I don't know how many guys are familiar with some of the Japanese engines. I'll pick on an SR20 here because I have a love-hate relationship with them. really, once you get high horsepower, it's mainly height. So the problem, and it's not just an SR problem, it's just easy to pick on because I've had this problem. Their rockers are just basically floating on a post. They're not pinned. There's no way to keep them from there. So when you start having a really aggressive rev limiter, they like to just throw their rockers out. There's two things that go there. Some people run what's called a rocker stopper, which tries to hold the rocker in place. All it actually does is when that rocker gets tossed, it gets caught in the rocker stopper and then tossed down in the rest of the valve train and damages everything. You don't have those. Typically, it tosses the rocker. You can at least put it back on. So, that's understanding your car too. Even in LS, everyone likes to pretend they're bulletproof, but they've got their some oiling issues, and depending on how high you're revving them, you got to start worrying about things like crank flex and stuff like that. So it's really a car or engine by engine basis. But I personally like to start more on the softer side because that's the kind of rev limiter I prefer, and then we'll bring it in from there. But a lot of it is, I've actually stood a car on a load-bearing dyno on the rev limiter, watching AFR, logging it, watching it real time on multiple widebands to try to make sure it's getting out. When you're cutting ignition, then you can only do so much. So that's when you start having to rely on, what are my IT saying? What are these temperatures saying? And really take a look at all your data and understand what's happening there. And it's not one thing for any particular engine. It's about being as friendly to that engine as possible. Because you want to ride the limiter, and like I said, we're trying to make these things pop. And I defaulted to not making it pop for that same reason. It's like, hey, we stand on the rev limiter. Do we really want to break these? So yeah, it's not a one size fits all answer. Again, back to everything else I've said, but understanding again, what you're doing and what's happening when you're on the rev limiter. Even how I'm doing the cut, and some engines respond better to one type of cut versus the other. Even things like I said, we've got very little drivetrain inertia as far as our clutch. We run a light flywheel, we run a small clutch, we run really no mass in our transmission and stuff like that. Versus some of the guys, we'll talk about Von Gittin, Chelsea DeNofa, they actually prefer the bigger clutch with a heavier flywheel because it keeps everything spun up. So that's a good thing. Our engine revs down quicker than, say, one of the engines with heavier weight. So maybe we've got to be a little more aggressive on it. Again, it's understanding everything as a package rather than, you add a little bit of fuel here and you take some timing out. That's what it is. Watch your temperatures. If your EGTs are good, if all your IETs are good, and your plugs look good, and you're not seeing any downsides to it, is just be gentle to it. Understand what you're doing. Understand what you're doing to mechanical sense as well, between your clutch, your drivetrain, your valve train, what push rods you're running, what cam you're running. We actually learned one of these lessons the hard way. We actually trashed a cam. We just took our engine apart, and we had the conversation of, do we run linked rollers? Do we not run linked rollers? And we're like, well, we're not going to rev high. Then we tuned to 7,500. It holds power. We turned the rev limiter up to 7,200 a couple times to get a little extra mile an hour in a corner. Again, because we were bumping up on the limiter too much, actually. So while I say we're on the limiter, we're within 200 RPMs of the limiter. We're not just like banging it all the time, but we're trying to set that to get him to creep up to that rev limiter without having to stand on it for 30 seconds at a time. So I say he's wiping throttle and he's on limiter. He's only on limiter for so many seconds at a time, and the rest of the tune is how do we get him as close as possible with the speed he needs. And that's where our quick change comes into play too. We change gears a lot to do that. Everything needs to be within this amount, because we don't want him on the limiter all the time. Some cars you might, some engines can take it better. Personally, if I can keep it off limiter, it's just nicer to everything. Let him hit the limiter a little bit, but just don't stand on it. It's just hard on things. There's no way around it. And that so tuning isn't just your engine. Tuning is your whole package. We're tuning gear ratios and tire pressure and everything, grip even, to match what we can do. And then the tune in the computer has to match all that in the end. I guess I hate to keep repeating that it's not one size fits all, but it's again about understanding your whole package and what you do, not just in the computer ECU even.
That's awesome, man. That's good advice.
That's amazing. This has been great, Ryan. We thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else? What else you got? Anyone else got topics they want to bring up?
I think John Bewley had some news he wanted to talk about.
Oh God, we've been waiting for like an hour and 20 minutes to talk about this. I'm sorry, Buey.
He's probably just been busy sipping on that bourbon he likes.
Nope. Somebody set some new records over the weeks while we were out. Go ahead, man. Tell them all about it.
Another new internet record got set.
Pretty badass one, though. And this time it's with some Aussie customers of yours, right?
Yeah, the guys over the Galato brothers, Sam and Lorenzo, over in Australia. Sam used to race Australian Pro Stock, or raced a Pro Stock car over there. He actually had a 500-inch big block car. And they took that out of the GTO. He had a heart attack a little bit, had a heart problem, had surgery, and they took the 388 LS engine that was out of Lorenzo's Calais that he ran drag challenge with. It was actually the fastest LS on drag challenge this year, running down in the mid 740s, I think.
Right. And that's their drag week over there.
Yeah, that's the Australian drag challenge. And they just took the whole engine out of the Calais and stuck it down in the GTO and slapped a single 94 millimeter on it. And they reset that car. That GTO is the fastest LS powered car in the country of Australia right now. And the 669 at 211 is also the fastest pass that's ever been made by a hydraulic roller camshaft equipped engine. And from what I can find, I actually quizzed Godbold and a couple of the guys at Comp if they knew of anybody that had done it with another
platform,
another
LS
family. Yeah. And they think it's like literally the fastest pass ever across all platforms with a hydraulic roller camshaft. And they did that on the fifth hit on the car. I think that car's only had like 5 hits on it.
Yeah, but those guys were racing 500-inch stuff before. They knew what they're doing.
The car still acted a lot differently with the small block than it did with the big block.
Sure. I'm sure it did. But I'm guessing they figured it out pretty quick, because if you look at that car, you know that somebody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it went a 106 60 foot, and then went 437, and then 669 with a 1. There's still a lot of room in the tune-up. We think the car will go high 240s at 215 or 216.
Wow.
It's flying on a hydraulic.
I know, right? And it's not that crazy. I mean, the camshaft that is in that car is on the exact same lobes that you buy from me every day.
Is it a wet block? Chase Griffiths,
it's a wet block. It's a dart wet block.
Cool.
Trick Flow 255 heads. Super Victor. Garrett 94 millimeter. GTX Garrett 94 millimeter. Non-intercooled on alcohol. So it's a pretty crazy setup. I mean, that motor has got 300K, 3,000K on it, 3 or 4,000K on it from doing drag challenge and driving it around.
Kilometers. Yeah.
So that's not a race motor that's only had like 5 hits on it. That's literally the motor out of Lorenzo streetcar that he drove around. It's 9.5 to 1 static. I mean, it's not anything special whatsoever. But it's just pretty cool, to go that fast on the 5th hit on the car, and to think we can get it down into the 640s. So I think it'll be a pretty fast little ride.
Rolling.
I apologize for asking a dumb question, but we're saying it's the fastest, maybe hydraulic cam, anything in Australia, et cetera, LS.
Anything anywhere.
World.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. That's where I was headed with the next question. So
okay, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's the fastest hydraulic roller equipped, engine in the world right now.
Or the quickest, I guess we have to say.
Fastest. Yeah. We clipped Andreas Arthurson over in Sweden. He had the record at a 673. With his old Monte Carlo from like 2012.
Right.
The original motor that he had in there was hydraulic roller, and then he moved on to solid roller, and then on to he moved on. He's actually got a new car now. But, it's pretty sweet. I'm looking forward to actually leaning on the car a little bit and getting trying to figure out what we can actually get out of it. Andrew, the springs on it aren't that crazy. They're only 1209Xs. We got more spring on it than what I normally run on the LSs because it does have a set of shafts on it. It does have a set of adjustable shafts on it. It's got, it's comp short travel lifter in it, T&D shaft rockers with a 1209 pack spring on it. But yeah, it is, like I said, what the killer thing about that is, I use the exact same lobe family on that camshaft. It's not a hybrid short travel hydraulic / low lash solid roller lobe or anything like that. It's literally the same lobe family that's on my shelf cams and that I do on all my custom stuff.
Are we venturing towards saying that there's going to be no difference between a hydraulic cam motor and a solid roller cam motor in terms of potential or speed? Is that where we're headed?
That's something that I've been preaching for a while. Are there advantages on it? Yeah, there's advantages to the solid roller, with depending on what it is and, the application. Honestly, I don't want to necessarily say that it's not better, but what I've been working toward is trying to elevate the hydraulic roller and raise it up to try and match what the solid roller stuff can do. And as lifters,
you'll never do it. You got to have a solid roller to build a race motor. Blah 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 blah. Sorry,
is that just like you got to have a max effort to do the nitrous thing? Is that
right?
Well, it's just, I've always felt like I've taken a little bit different approach to other people in the industry about things. Everybody, from how I view the engine itself in a turbo combination to how I view how to set the drivetrain up. And I don't know, it feels like a little bit of validation that my thought processes aren't that far out in left field with what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to approach it,
No.
But yeah, I mean, I think it goes to prove that, there's been, in the last 3 years, there's been a really, real big push for stability versus how much area you can get, right? Because, the turbo engines don't need it. I need the stability. When it closes the valve, I need the valve to stay closed. And when it opens it, I need it to trace the lobe as close as possible. So I just think it's a testament to the work that Billy Godbold has worked with me on and done with me and helped me with on, developing some of these forced induction turbo specific lobe families that he and I have been working on the last 2 or 3 years. So we think we've made some pretty good improvements to what's been available. And I think it's just what that car has been able to go out and do is kind of a testament to that. And, it's not, and that motor doesn't turn crazy RPM or anything, it's a 7,600 RPM motor. So it's not like what some of the guys are even able to do. We haven't even gone in and leaned on it really hard yet. That motor made, what was it, 1760 to the hub on one of the hub dynos over there that my buddy Jeff Johnson, big shout out to Jeff. He tunes the car, Jeff Johnson, street built over in Wangara, Western Australia. He does a lot of turbo LS stuff over there, and everything he does is just running its absolute ass off. Insert awkward silence here.
Well, do we have anything else?
Could bitch about the free shit ferry.
Yeah,
I'm taking on the free shit ferry crowd today. Oh, this guy gave me something free. I'm going to make a video and tell everybody it's the coolest thing in the world and it's the best parts in the world. Oh, somebody gave me a free profiler, so I'll make a video about how to use it, even though I've never, ever once tuned it in my life. Oh, my God. Dude, just because someone gives somebody something free, just remember, if they got it free or for a discount, you pretty much got to tune out their product evaluation. That's all I'm going to throw out there, And also, if you don't try to get, like Bewley often said, free shit is still shit. And that's maybe not always the case. If you can get some idiot to give you $25,000 to put a sticker on your car for the year, then even I will tell you to go ahead and take that kind of free shit, But if someone's like, oh man, I'll give you these free parts if you go talk some shit about this guy or whatever, don't listen to that guy, because you can see on the internet how that stuff blows up in their faces, and it's actually really hilarious. oh, you sold my parts that I gave you, blah, blah, blah. No, dude, you traded me something for these or whatever. I'm reading this stuff on the internet and it is killing me hilarious today. Just some of these guys got to be loyal to their pals that got free shit, but you blew some guy's car up in the dyno and you got to be nice to him and all your friends hate that guy. Oh my God, what trouble it can get you in by just having some schmoozer give you free junk. Just, and also don't try to squeeze here's my other advice. Don't find a tuner or really anybody who's trying to give you free stuff, because that means their business is not in great shape and they're trying to get it someplace from a marketing perspective that it's not already. What about a tuner who doesn't give you free shit, just gives you good services for the money? The guys that don't discount stuff, those are the ones whose work you got to pay attention to, because that guy's probably been doing it for 20 years and he doesn't give out free stuff anymore. He just gives you good value for your dollar, so there's always going to be the eBay builds crowd, and those are the guys whose shit's always not running right anyway. Fine, I'm cool with that. We need that crowd. But at the same time, man, just beware of the guys that are out there running around trying to give somebody something free to be your pal or get you to sweet talk them or to shit talk their competitors. God, we've seen enough of that this last couple of years, man. Hey, I'll give you this free parachute mount if you'll shit talk about this other guy, whatever. Just avoid those people like the plague, if at all possible. Oh my God. It's so funny to read how this stuff backfires on people who have to do the free shit. We're now calling them the free shit fairy. Beware the free shit fairy, because they come back to bite you later. That's all.
To that piggyback on that too, I guess one of the things, like there are plenty of partnerships that work, right? But that's when the difference between free shit and, our drift team has discounts and stuff, but every single one of those guys, the free shit, oh, here's free shit or here's free shit for a sticker. We've got, I think, a probably 20-page document of these are the things we need to get every time that we owe our partners, because it's not free. We work for these guys. We're getting paid. That's why we're getting these parts. We're giving them marketing or something, stuff like this, mentioning our sponsors and guys that hooked us up and in parts we like. And that's part of our job. And one thing we use a lot that helps with us is since, we tune the car, and we've got some of this data, we give a lot of data back to some of our guys, and that's helped us a lot. But there's a lot of good podcasts, Studio Road, and Davin's going to kill me because I forgot the name of their site now. But if you look at Chris Rhodes' stuff and his new Studio Road and On the Road, he talks to a lot of marketing guys, and that's what they talk about. As a racer, how do you get sponsorships and partnerships? And one thing they've always said is remember, you have to bring value to these guys. It's not free shit. If you're getting free shit, either you're really lucky or you're getting shit.
And that value may not be, I'll get your exposure. I'll get my sticker on her car and it'll be seen by 20 people. That's not really the value that a lot of these guys are looking for. In some cases,
I'll build my car with this exposure you gave me, because
but I can see in your case, if I was a manufacturer, I'd want you to test my stuff and break it and see what make it better. Maybe that partnership is you're doing testing for them.
We've actually got a drive shaft out right now trying to figure out what happens, because 400.
So maybe that value you bring when you partner up with them is you're testing parts and reporting back how it works for them. That's a little bit different.
That's part of it, and there's between marketing to everything else. It's understanding that if you're asking for free shit, then you're doing it wrong.
Right.
If you're offering to work at some level, the number of times I've gotten, I think one of the best I ever got is a guy sent me just, hey, do you guys do any sponsorships? And my response was, well, here's our drivers. Our program's pretty much maxed out at this point. But if you send me a proposal over, I can read it over, see what we can do for you. I think the response I got was, here's my proposal. You give me free shit. I put a sticker on my car. How about that? And that was the last I heard from him. So, it's everyone in this industry. I probably see a tenth of some of these other
We actually covered sponsorship stuff in a previous episode, and I think Chad talked a lot about.
Chad Reynolds nailed it down pretty good.
He said, "Here's the things you need to do. Here's the guidelines. Here's the stuff you should go for. Don't be butthurt if they say no, because there's 9 million people asking them every day for something free." He went through all of that, and we had a pretty good show about that stuff.
Yeah, what's funny is the best proposal I ever got for sponsorship was from a drift guy. It It was a PDF. It's about 11 pages long. Nice colors.
Dude, put some effort into it.
I
Yeah.
was like, dude, and you know what? His effort was rewarded because you know he called me back. I told him I was kind of maxed out for when he hit me up, but then he hit me up in the off season, and I helped him out. I put a cam in his hands to help him out. So
good.
Yeah, we got that same response from was it the CSF? I think we sent them our proposal and we went to speak and was like, man, this is the best proposal I've ever seen. And we're like, all right, well, that's like Scott, we telling me about our website, and we live in this little bubble, and I think we try to be super critical of ourselves, and I think anyone that's really trying to last in this business has to be.
Yeah.
If you're not,
your own worst critic.
Off and getting yourself in trouble, which we all do, I'm sure. But
he's covering for me, guys.
If you're in this industry and you've lasted more than 2 years, you've had one of those conversations. So, but yeah, like we live in this bubble, and we're so critical of always thinking what's working, what's not working. That feedback is awesome. So if anybody on this side ever sees that. Sitting, it's kind of odd because I sit on both sides of that fence here. Hearing that feedback is the guy that's putting this effort in. Even in that case, we got a little bit from some of those guys that told us that, but that alone just definitely helped their confidence. Let us know that we're at least doing something right, because we could have decided to change that up because maybe we thought that was our problem, and we went and looked at other things, and that was good to know that we're doing something right at least.
For sure. All right. So I think that about wraps it up. Some things we should talk about quick. We still have 4 seats left. We added virtual seats for the Mopar Factory ECU class. We're doing our second one with Rick Tapp. The class is going to be, the last weekend in March here. Let me pull up the calendar. It's going to be the last
March
Saturday and Sunday in March. 30th and 31st. Yep. And we're doing that at in a shop in Dallas-Fort Worth area. But if you don't want to come to that, there's still 4 seats up for grabs of 7 that we opened up to attend via a conference bridge, real similar to what we're doing here. Only you'll be able to speak back to us. So we're not making it a live stream or a webinar. It's not going to be 100 people tuned in. It's going to be literally, I said, a limit of 7 people over the conference bridge. So you'll have as much of the teacher's attention as anybody else would. And we'll have live video of the car. We have a message in a chat group where as soon as we take data logs, we send them to the group before we continue, so everybody has the logs at home. Anyway, you could conceivably set this up in your garage with your car, with your Mopar, your factory Mopar car, and factory ECU Mopar, and work with us through a tune-up. So it's kind of like bringing your own car. Anyway, and we made those seats a little cheaper than attending the class. It's 2 full days of training, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, web access via Ring Central, and private, obviously, and check out Realtuners.com. Find out click on live EFI tuning classes and then factory ECU classes, and you'll see it in there that the Mopar factory ECU. We are going to do that for other factory classes and maybe eventually for the standalone classes that I teach. I'd like to get on that here pretty soon. But and maybe do some fuel tech classes that way, where more boutique ECUs where people aren't likely to fill a classroom in a big city, but maybe we get 10 or 15 people that want to go over fuel tech via conference bridge for a weekend. But it is a 16-hour deal, so just be prepared. It's $500 for 16 hours. That, and we've also got new webinars, 2 new Holly webinars we added online: fuel pressure comp and flex fuel setup. So check that out at Realtuners.com under online webinars. And you'll click on previous webinars, and it's in our store as well. You can go find it in the store. But also, thanks to our guest, Brian Barnhill, tonight, check out tunertools.com. Thanks, man, for showing up. We appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. I'll definitely be.
You're going to have to come back. Yeah, I'm actually kind of into the drifting thing at this point. I'm kind of liking it. So everybody's like, what? But yeah, it's interesting to me. So very cool. Evans, Fowler, Bewley, anybody else got anything else you want to cover tonight? Drunk Dahlquist, want to dial back in? Hey, everybody! He's like the guy who's Santa Claus, but not during Christmas when he's drunk. That's Dahlquist, the very best Santa Claus that you've ever known. Not dressed up like Santa Claus when he's drinking in the wintertime. And I mean, if you're in Fargo, North Dakota, there ain't shit else to do but drink and build race motors for race season, which I think lasts about 2.5 months up there.
I was going to say 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's short. But anyway, God bless him. We love you. Happy birthday, Mark. Happy birthday to our own Scott Evans today as well. Superior engineer, audio engineer, and tuner. Hopefully see some of you guys sign up for this Mopar class coming up. But thanks again, Brian. Brian, you're just going to have to sit back in here next week or anytime you want, man. It's too cool having you.
Anytime you guys want me here, as long as as I'm free.
Nope. Come on out. This is a home to any tuners that want to sit in that know what they're doing. So you are more than welcome. But with that, Evans, go ahead and take us out. And everybody else have a good night. Appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, straight as can be. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you next week. Do you want to learn how to tune electronic fuel injection live in person with the guys from Realtuners? We have 2-day courses in dyno shops all across the country. You can register for these at Realtuners.com and click on Realtuners Live Classes. For more information or to make a reservation, go to Realtuners.com or message us on Facebook at Realtuners LLC. Now, about those classes. When are they, you might ask? March 30th and 31st, late model Dodge and Mopar factory ECU tuning with Rick Tapp in Dallas, Fort Worth. April 13th and 14th, a level 1 EFI course at Endless Performance in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. April 27th and 28th, an advanced class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. May 18th and 19th, a standalone EFI Level 1 class at 417 Motorsports in Springfield, Missouri. June 15th and 16th, a Level 2 advanced course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at Endless Performance. And of course, we will be trying to schedule more classes and more dates throughout the year, so keep checking back for more info. And remember, don't forget to have your host spayed or neutered.